Hi. Chapter 5, Jon I. There were times, not many, but a few, when Jon Snow was glad he was a bastard. As he filled his wine cup once more from a passing flagon, it struck him that this might be one of them. He settled back into his place on the bench among the younger squires and drank. The sweet, fruity taste of summer wine filled his mouth and brought a smile to his lips. The great hall of Winterfell was hazy with smoke and heavy with the smell of roasted meat and fresh-baked bread. Its grey stone walls were draped with banners. White, gold, crimson, the direwolf of Stark, Baratheon's crowned stag, the lion of Lannister. A singer was playing the high harp and reciting a ballad, but down at this end of the hall his voice could scarcely be heard above the roar of the fire, the clangor of pewter plates and cups, and the low mutter of 100 drunken conversations. It was the 4th hour of the welcoming feast laid for the king. Jon's brothers and sisters had been seated with the royal children beneath the raised platform where Lord and Lady Stark hosted the king and queen. In honor of the occasion, his lord father would doubtless permit each child a glass of wine, but no more than that. Down here on the benches, there was no one to stop Jon drinking as much as he had a thirst for. And he was finding that he had a man's thirst, to the raucous delight of the youths around him, who urged him on every time he drank a glass. They were fine company, and Jon relished the stories they were telling, tales of battle and betting and the hunt. He was certain that his companions were more entertaining than the king's offspring. He had sated his curiosity about the visitors when they made their entrance. The procession had passed not a foot from the place he had been given on the bench, and Jon had gotten a good long look at all of them. His lord father had come first, escorting the queen. She was as beautiful as men said. A jeweled tiara gleamed amidst her long golden hair, its emeralds a perfect match for the green of her eyes. His father helped her up the steps to the dais and led her to her seat, but the queen never so much as looked at him. Even at 14, Jon could see through her smile. Next had come King Robert himself, with Lady Stark on his arm. The king was a great disappointment to Jon. His father had talked of him often, the peerless Robert Baratheon, a demon of the trident, the fiercest warrior of the realm, a giant among princes. Jon saw only a fat man, red-faced under his beard, sweating through his silks. He walked like a man half in his cups. After them came the children, little Rickon first, managing the long walk with all the dignity a 3-year-old could muster. Jon had to urge him on when he stopped to visit. Close behind came Robb in grey wool trimmed with white, the Stark colors. He had the Princess Myrcella on his arm. She was a wisp of a girl, not quite 8, her hair a cascading of golden curls under a jeweled net. Jon noticed the shy looks she gave Robb as they passed between the tables and the timid way she smiled at him. He decided she was insipid. Robb didn't even have the sense to realize how stupid she was. He was grinning like a fool. His half-sisters escorted the royal princes. Arya was paired with plump young Tommen, whose white blonde hair was longer than hers. Sansa, 2 years older, drew the crown prince, Joffrey Baratheon. He was 12, younger than Jon or Robb, but taller than either, to Jon's vast dismay. Prince Joffrey had his sister's hair and his mother's deep green eyes. A thick tangle of blonde curls dripped down past his golden choker and high velvet collar. Sansa looked radiant as she walked beside him, but Jon did not like Joffrey's pouty lips or the bored, disdainful way he looked at Winterfell's great hall. He was more interested in the pair that came behind him, the Queen's brothers, the Lannisters of Casterly Rock, the Lion and the Imp. There was no mistaking which was which. Sir Jaime Lannister was twin to Queen Cersei, tall and golden with flashing green eyes and a smile that cut like a knife. He wore crimson silk, high black boots, and a black satin cloak. On the breast of his tunic, the lion of his house was embroidered in gold thread, roaring its defiance. They called him the Lion of Lannister to his face and whispered Kingslayer behind his back. Jon found it hard to look away from him. This is what a king should look like, he thought to himself as the man passed. Then he saw the other one, waddling along half hidden by his brother's side. Tyrion Lannister, the youngest of Lord Tywin's brood and by far the ugliest. All that the gods had given to Cersei and Jaime, they had denied Tyrion. He was a dwarf, half his brother's height, struggling to keep pace on stunted legs. His head was far too large for his body, with a brood squashed-in face beneath a swollen shelf of brow. One green eye and one black one peered out from under a lank fall of hair so blonde it seemed white. Jon watched him with fascination. The last of the High Lords to enter were his uncle, Benjen Stark of the Night's Watch, and his father's ward, young Theon Greyjoy. Benjen gave Jon a warm smile as he went by. Theon ignored him utterly, but there was nothing new in that. After all had been seated, toasts were made, thanks were given and returned, and then the feasting began. Jon had started drinking then, and he had not stopped. Something rubbed against his leg beneath the table. Jon saw red eyes staring up at him. "Hungry again?" he asked. There was still half a honeyed chicken in the center of the table. Jon reached out to tear off a leg, then had a better idea. He knifed the bird whole and let the carcass slide to the floor between his legs. Ghost ripped into it in savage silence. His brothers and sisters had not been permitted to bring their wolves to the banquet, but there were more curs than Jon could count on his end of the hall, and no one had said a word about his pup. He told himself he was fortunate in that, too. His eyes stung. Jon rubbed at them savagely, cursing the smoke. He swallowed another gulp of wine and watched his direwolf devour the chicken. Dogs moved between the tables, trailing after the serving girls. One of them, a black mongrel bitch with long yellow eyes, caught a scent of the chicken. She stopped and edged under the bench to get a share. Jon watched the confrontation. The bitch growled low in her throat and moved closer. Ghost looked up, silent, and fixed the dog with those hot red eyes. The bitch snapped an angry challenge. She was 3 times the size of the direwolf pup. But Ghost did not move. He stood over his prize and opened his mouth, baring his fangs. The bitch tensed, barked again, then thought better of this fight. She turned and slunk away with one last defiant snap to save her pride. Ghost went back to his meal. Jon grinned and reached under the table to ruffle the shaggy white fur. The direwolf looked up at him, nipped gently at his hand, then went back to eating. "Is this one of the direwolves I've heard so much of?" a familiar voice asked close at hand. Jon looked up happily as his Uncle Ben put a hand on his head and ruffled his hair much as Jon had ruffled the wolves. "Yes," he said, "his name is Ghost." One of the squires interrupted the bawdy story he'd been telling to make room at the table for their lord's brother. Benjen Stark straddled the bench with long legs and took the wine cup out of Jon's hand. "Summer wine," he said after a taste. "Nothing so sweet. How many cups have you had, Jon?" Jon smiled. Ben Stark laughed. "As I feared. Ah, well, I believe I was younger than you the first time I got truly and sincerely drunk." He snagged a roasted onion, dripping brown with gravy, from a nearby trencher and bit into it. It crunched. His uncle was sharp-featured and gaunt as a mountain crag, but there was always a hint of laughter in his blue-gray eyes. He dressed in black, as befitted a man of the Night's Watch. Tonight it was rich black velvet, with high leather boots and a wide belt with a silver buckle. A heavy silver chain was looped round his neck. Benjen watched Ghost with amusement as he ate his onion. "A very quiet wolf," he observed. "He's not like the others," Jon said. "He never makes a sound. That's why I named him Ghost. That and because he's white. The others are all dark gray or black. There are still direwolves beyond the wall. We hear them on our rangings." Benjen Stark gave Jon a long look. "Don't you usually eat at table with your brothers?" "Most times." Jon answered in a flat voice. But tonight Lady Stark thought it might give insult to the royal family to seat a bastard among them. I see. His uncle glanced over his shoulder at the raised table at the far end of the hall. My brother does not seem very festive tonight. Jon had noticed that, too. A bastard had to learn to notice things, to read the truth that people hid behind their eyes. His father was observing all the courtesies, but there was this tightness in him that Jon had seldom seen before. He said little, looking out over the hall with hooded eyes, seeing nothing. 2 seats away, the king had been drinking heavily all night. His broad face was flushed behind his great black beard. He made many a toast, laughed loudly at every jest, and attacked each dish like a starving man, but beside him the queen seemed as cold as an ice sculpture. The queen is angry too, Jon told his uncle in a low, quiet voice. Father took the king down to the crypts this morning. The queen didn't want him to go. Benjen gave Jon a careful, measuring look. You don't miss much, do you, Jon? We could use a man like you on the wall. Jon swelled with pride. Robb is a stronger lance than I am, but I'm the better sword, and Holland says I sit a horse as well as anyone in the castle. Notable achievements. Take me with you when you go back to the wall, Jon said in a sudden rush. Father will give me leave to go if you ask him. I know he will. Uncle Benjen studied his face carefully. The wall is a hard place for a boy, Jon. I am almost a man grown, Jon protested. I will turn 15 on my next name day, and Maester Lewin says bastards grow up faster than other children. That's true enough, Benjen said with a downward twist of his mouth. He took Jon's cup from the table, filled it fresh from a nearby pitcher, and drank down a long swallow. Daeron Targaryen was only 14 when he conquered Dorne, Jon said. The young dragon was one of his heroes. A conquest that lasted a summer, his uncle pointed out. Your boy king lost 10,000 men taking the place, and another 50 trying to hold it. Someone should have told him that war isn't a game. He took another sip of wine. Also, he said, wiping his mouth, Daeron Targaryen was only 18 when he died. Or have you forgotten that part? I forget nothing, Jon boasted. The wine was making him bold. He tried to sit very straight to make himself seem taller. I want to serve in the Night's Watch, Uncle. He had thought on it long and hard, lying abed at night while his brothers slept around him. Robb would someday inherit Winterfell, would command great armies as Warden of the North. Bran and Rickard would be Robb's bannermen and rule holdfasts in his name. His sisters Arya and Sansa would marry the heirs of other great houses and go south as mistress of castles of their own. But what place could a bastard hope to earn? You don't know what you're asking, Jon. The Night's Watch is a sworn brotherhood. We have no families. None of us will ever father sons. Our wife is duty. Our mistress is honor. A bastard can have honor too, Jon said. I am ready to swear your oath. You are a boy of 14, Benjen said. Not a man, not yet. Until you have known a woman, you cannot understand what you would be giving up. I don't care about that, Jon said hotly. You might, if you knew what it meant, Benjen said. If you knew what the oath would cost you, you might be less eager to pay the price, son. Jon felt anger rise inside him. I'm not your son. Benjen Stark stood up. More's the pity. He put a hand on Jon's shoulder. Come back to me after you've fathered a few bastards of your own, and we'll see how you feel. Jon trembled. I will never father a bastard, he said carefully. Never! He spat it out like venom. Suddenly he realized the table had fallen silent, and they were all looking at him. He felt the tears begin to well in his eyes. He pushed himself to his feet. I must be excused, he said, with the last of his dignity. He whirled and bolted before they could see him cry. He must have drunk more wine than he had realized. His feet got tangled under him as he tried to leave, and he lurched sideways into a serving girl and sent a flagon of spiced wine crashing to the floor. Laughter boomed all around him, and Jon felt hot tears on his cheeks. Someone tried to steady him. He wrenched free of their grip and ran half-blind for the door. Ghost followed close at at his heels out into the night. The yard was quiet and empty. A lone sentry stood high on the battlements of the inner wall, his cloak pulled tight around him against the cold. He looked bored and miserable as he huddled there alone, but Jon would have traded places with him in an instant. Otherwise, the castle was dark and deserted. Jon had seen an abandoned holdfast once, a drear place where nothing moved but the wind and the stones kept silent about whatever people had lived there. Winterfell reminded him of that tonight. The sounds of music and song spilled through the open windows behind him. They were the last things Jon wanted to hear. He wiped away his tears on the sleeve of his shirt, furious that he had let them fall, and turned to go. "Boy," a voice called out to him. Jon turned. Tyrion Lannister was sitting on the ledge above the door to the great hall, looking for all the world like a gargoyle. The dwarf grinned down at him. "Is that animal a wolf?" "A direwolf," Jon said. "His name is Ghost." He stared up at the little man, his disappointment suddenly forgotten. "What are you doing up there? Why aren't you at the feast?" "Too hot, too noisy, and I drank too much wine," the dwarf told him. "I learned long ago that it is considered rude to vomit on your brother. Might I have a closer look at your wolf?" Jon hesitated, then nodded slowly. "Can you climb down, or shall I bring a ladder?" "Oh, bleed that," the little man said. He pushed himself off the ledge into empty air. Jon gasped, then watched with awe as Tyrion Lannister spun around in a tight ball, landed lightly on his hands, then vaulted backward onto his legs. Ghost backed away from him uncertainly. The dwarf dusted himself off and laughed. "I believe I've frightened your wolf. My apologies." "He's not scared," Jon said. He knelt and called out, "Ghost, come here. Come on, that's it." The wolf pup padded closer and nuzzled at Jon's face, but he kept a wary eye on Tyrion Lannister, and when the dwarf reached out to pet him, he drew back and bared his fangs in a silent snarl. "Shy, isn't he?" Lannister observed. "Sit, Ghost," Jon commanded. "That's it. Keep still." He looked up at the dwarf. "You can touch him now. He won't move until I tell him to. I've been training him." "I see," Lannister said. He ruffled the snow-white fur between Ghost's ears and said, "Nice wolf." "If I wasn't here, he'd tear out your throat," Jon said. It wasn't actually true yet, but it would be. "In that case, you had best stay close," the dwarf said. He cocked his oversized head to one side and looked Jon over with mismatched eyes. "I am Tyrion Lannister." "I know," Jon said. He rose. Standing, he was taller than the dwarf. It made him feel strange. "You're Ned Stark's bastard, aren't you?" Jon felt a coldness pass right through him. He pressed his lips together and said nothing. "Did I offend you?" Lannister said. "Sorry. Dwarves don't have to be tactful. Generations of capering fools in motley have won me the right to dress badly and say any damn thing that comes to my head." He grinned. "You are the bastard, though." "Lord Eddard Stark is my father," Jon admitted stiffly. Lannister studied his face. "Yes," he said, "I can see it. You have more of the North in you than your brothers." "Half-brothers," Jon corrected. He was pleased by the dwarf's comment, but he tried not to let it show. "Let me give you some counsel, bastard," Lannister said. "Never forget what you are, for surely the world will not. Make it your strength, then it can never be your weakness. Armor yourself in it, and it will never be used to hurt you." Jon was in no mood for anyone's counsel. "What do you know about being a bastard?" "All dwarves are bastards in their father's eyes." "You are your mother's true-born son of Lannister." "Am I?" the dwarf replied, sardonic. "Do tell my lord father. My mother died birthing me, and he's never been sure." "I don't even know who my mother was," Jon said. "Some woman, no doubt. Most of them are." He favored Jon with a rueful grin. "Remember this, boy. All dwarves may be bastards, yet not all bastards need be dwarves." And with that he turned and sauntered back into the feast, whistling a tune. When he opened the door, the light from within threw his shadow clear across the yard, and for just a moment, Tyrion Lannister stood tall as a king. best introduction of such a major character. Like, it is just so great. It is so great. I love Tyrion Lannister. I love the way he's introduced, and he drops so many iconic lines in his first chapter here with Jon. Catelyn II, Chapter 6. Of all the rooms in Winterfell's great keep, Catelyn's bedchambers were the hottest. She seldom had to light a fire. The castle had been built over natural hot springs, and the scalding waters rushed through its walls and chambers like blood through a man's body, driving the chill from the stone halls, filling the glass gardens with a moist warmth, keeping the earth from freezing. Open pools smoked day and night in a dozen small courtyards. There was a little thing in summer. Oh, Lord. That was a little thing in summer. In winter, it was the difference between life and death. Catelyn's bath was always hot and steaming, and her walls warm to the touch. The warmth reminded her of River Run, of days in the sun with Lysa and Edmure, but Ned could never abide the heat. The Starks were made for the cold, he would tell her, and she would laugh and tell him in that case they had certainly built their castle in the wrong place. So when they finished, Ned rolled off and climbed from her bed as he had done 1,000 times before. He crossed the room, pulled back the heavy tapestries, and threw open the high, narrow windows one by one, letting the night air into the chamber. The wind swirled around him as he stood facing the dark, naked and empty-handed. Catelyn pulled the furs to her chin and watched him. He looked somehow smaller and more vulnerable, like the youth she had wed in the Sept of River Run 15 long years agone. Her loins still ached from the urgency of his love-making. It was a good ache. She could feel his seed within her. She prayed that it might quicken there. It had been 3 years since Rickon. She was not too old. She could give him another son. "I will refuse him," Ned said as he turned back to her. His eyes were haunted, his voice thick with doubt. Catelyn sat up in the bed. "You cannot! You must not! My duties are here in the north. I have no wish to be Robert's hand. He will not understand that. He is a king now, and kings are not like other men. If you refuse to serve him, he will wonder why, and sooner or later he will begin to suspect that you oppose him. Can't you see the danger that would put us in?" Ned shook his head, refusing to believe. "Robert would never harm me or any of mine. We were closer than brothers. He loves me. If I refuse him, he will roar and curse and bluster, and in a week we will laugh about it together. I know the man." "You knew the man," she said. "The king is a stranger to you." Catelyn remembered the direwolf dead in the snow, the broken antler lodged deep in her throat. She had to make him see. "Pride is everything to a king, my lord. Robert came all this way to see you, to bring you these great honors. You cannot throw them back in his face." "Honors?" Ned laughed bitterly. "In his eyes, yes," she said. "And in yours?" "And in mine," she blazed, angry now. Why couldn't he see? "He offers his own son in marriage to our daughter. What else would you call that? Sansa might someday be queen. Her sons would rule from the Wall to the Mountains of Dorne. What is so wrong with that?" "Gods, Catelyn, Sansa is only 11, Ned said. "And Joffrey is," she finished for him, "crown prince and heir to the Iron Throne. And I was only 12 when my father promised me to your brother Brandon." That brought a bitter twist to Ned's mouth. Brandon. Yes, Brandon would know what to do. He always did. It was all meant for Brandon. You, Winterfell, everything. He was born to be a king's hand and a father to queens. I never asked for this cup to pass to me." "Perhaps not," Catelyn said, "but Brandon is dead and the cup has passed and you must drink from it, like it or not." Ned turned away from her, back to the night. He stood staring out in the darkness, watching the moon and the stars perhaps, or perhaps the sentries on the wall. Catelyn softened then to see his pain. Eddard Stark had married her in Brandon's place, as custom decreed, but the shadow of his dead brother still lay between them, as did the other, the shadow of the woman he would not name, the woman who had borne him his bastard son. She was about to go to him when the knock came at the door, loud and unexpected. Ned turned, frowning. "What is it?" Desmond's voice came through the door. "My lord, Maester Luwin is without and begs urgent audience." "You told him I'd left orders not to be disturbed?" "Yes, my lord, he insists." "Very well. Send him in." Ned crossed to the wardrobe and slipped on a heavy robe. Catelyn realized suddenly how cold it had become. She sat up in bed and pulled the furs to her chin. "Perhaps we should close the windows," she suggested. Ned nodded absently. Maester Luwin was shown in. The maester was a small grey man. His eyes were grey and quick and saw much. His hair was grey, what little the years had left him. His robe was grey wool, trimmed with white fur, the Stark colors. Its great floppy sleeves had pockets hidden inside. Luwin was always tucking things into those sleeves and producing other things from them. Books, messages, strange artifacts, toys for the children. With all he kept hidden in his sleeves, Catelyn was surprised that Maester Luwin could lift his arms at all. The maester waited until the door had closed behind him before he spoke. "My lord," he said to Ned, "pardon for disturbing your rest. I have been left a message." Ned looked irritated. "Been left? By whom? Has there been a rider? I was not told." "There was no rider, my lord, only a carved wooden box left on a table in my observatory while I napped. My servant saw no one, but it must have been brought by someone in the king's party. We have had no other visitors from the south." "A wooden box, you say?" Catelyn said. "Inside was a fine new lens for the observatory, from Myr by the look of it. The lens crafters of Myr are without equal." Ned frowned. He had little patience for the sort of thing Catelyn knew. "A lens?" he said. "What has that to do with me?" "I asked the same question," Maester Luwin said. Clearly there was more to this than the seeming. Under the heavy weight of her furs, Catelyn shivered. "A lens is an instrument to help us see." "Indeed it is." He fingered the collar of his order, a heavy chain worn tight around the neck beneath his robe, each link forged from a different metal. Catelyn could feel dread stirring inside her once again. "What is it that they would have us see more clearly?" "The very thing I asked myself." Maester Luwin drew a tightly rolled paper out of his sleeve. "I found the true message concealed within a false bottom when I dismantled the box the lens had come in, but it is not for my eyes." Ned held out his hand. "Let me have it, then." Luwin did not stir. "Pardons, my lord. The message is not for you, either. It is marked for the eyes of the Lady Catelyn, and her alone. May I approach?" Catelyn nodded, not trusting to speak. The maester glanced at the paper on the table beside the bed. It was sealed with a small blob of blue wax. Luwin bowed and began to retreat. "Stay," Ned commanded him. His voice was grave. He looked at Catelyn. "What is it? My lady, you're shaking." "I'm afraid," she admitted. She reached out and took the letter in trembling hands. The furs dropped away from her nakedness forgotten. In the blue wax was the moon and falcon seal of House Arryn. "It's from Lysa." Catelyn looked at her husband. "It will not make us glad," she told him. "There is grief in this message, Ned. I can feel it." Ned frowned, his face darkening. "Open it." Catelyn broke the seal. Her eyes moved over the words. At first they made no sense to her. Then she remembered. "Lysa took no chances. When we were girls together, we had a private language, she and I." "Can you read it?" "Yes," Catelyn admitted. "Then tell us." "Perhaps I should withdraw," Maester Luwin said. "No," Catelyn said. "We will need your counsel." She threw back the furs and climbed from the bed. The night air was as cold as the grave on her bare skin as she padded across the room. Maester Luwin averted his eyes. Even Ned looked shocked. "What are you doing?" he asked. "Lighting a fire," Catelyn told him. She found a dressing gown and shrugged into it, then knelt over the cold hearth. "Maester Luwin," Ned began. "Maester Luwin has delivered all of my children," Catelyn said. "This is no time for false modesty." She slid the paper in among the kindling and placed the heavier logs on top of it. Ned crossed the room, took her by the arm, and pulled her to her feet. He held her there, his face inches from her. "My lady, tell me, what was this message?" Catelyn stiffened in his grasp. "A warning," she said softly, "if we have the wits to hear." His eyes searched her face. "Go on." "Lysa says Jon Arryn was murdered." His fingers tightened on her arm. "By whom?" "The Lannisters," she told him. "The Queen." Ned released his hold on her arm. There were deep red marks in her skin. "Gods," he whispered. His voice was hoarse. "Your sister is sick with grief. She cannot know what she is saying." "She knows," Catelyn said. "Lysa is impulsive, yes, but this message was carefully planned, cleverly hidden. She knew it meant death if her letter fell into the wrong hands. To risk so much, she must have had more than mere suspicion." Catelyn looked to her husband. "Now we truly have no choice. You must be Robert's hand. You must go south with him and learn the truth." She saw at once that Ned had reached a very different conclusion. "The only truths I know are here. The south is a nest of adders I would do better to avoid." Lewin plucked at the chain collar where it chafed the soft skin of his throat. "The hand of the king has great power, my lord. Power to find the truth of Lord Arryn's death, to bring his killers to the king's justice. Power to protect Lady Arryn and her son if the worst be true." Ned glanced helplessly around the bedchamber. Catelyn's heart went out to him, but she knew she could not take him in her arms just then. First the victory must be won, for her children's sake. "You say you love Robert like a brother. Would you leave your brother surrounded by Lannisters?" "The others take both of you," Ned muttered darkly. He turned away from them and went to the window. She did not speak, nor did the maester. They waited, quiet, while Eddard Stark said a silent farewell to the home he loved. When he turned away from the window at last, his voice was tired and full of melancholy, and moisture glittered faintly in the corners of his eyes. "My father went south once to answer the summons of a king. He never came home again." "A different time," Maester Lewin said. "A different king." "Yes," Ned said dully. He seated himself in a chair by the hearth. "Catelyn, you shall stay here in Winterfell." His words were like an icy draft through her heart. "No," she said, suddenly afraid. Was this to be her punishment? Never to see his face again, nor to feel his arms around her? "Yes," Ned said, in words that would brook no argument. "You must govern the north in my stead, while I run Robert's errands. There must always be a Stark in Winterfell. Robb is 14. Soon enough he will be a man grown. He must learn to rule, and I will not be there for him. Make him part of your councils. He must be ready when the time comes." "God's will not for many years," Maester Lewin murmured. "Maester Lewin, I trust you as I would my own blood. Give my wife your voice in all things great and small. Teach my son the things he needs to know. Winter is coming." Maester Lewin nodded gravely. Then silence fell until Catelyn found her courage and asked the question whose answer she most dreaded. "What of the other children?" Ned stood and took her in his arms and held her face close to his. "Rickon is very young," he said gently. "He should stay here with you and Robb. The others I would take with me." "I could not bear it," Catelyn said, trembling. "You must," he said. "Sansa must wed Joffrey. That is clear now, and we must give them no grounds to suspect our devotion. And it is past time that Arya learned the ways of a southern court. In a few years she will be of an age to marry, too." Sansa would shine in the south, Catelyn thought to herself, and the gods knew that Arya needed refinement. Reluctantly she let go of them in her heart, but not Bran. Never Bran. "Yes," she said, "but please, Ned, for the love you bear me, let Bran remain here at Winterfell. He is only 7. "I was 8 when my father sent me to foster at the Eyrie," Ned said. "Sir Roderick tells me there is bad feeling between Robb and Prince Joffrey. That is not healthy. Bran can bridge that distance. He is a sweet boy, quick to laugh, easy to love. Let him grow up with the young princes. Let him become their friend, as Robert became mine. Our house will be safer for it. He was right. Catelyn knew it. It did not make the pain any easier to bear. She would lose all 4 of them then, Ned and both girls and her sweet, loving Bran. Only Robb and little Rickon would be left to her. She felt lonely already. Winterfell was such a vast place. "Keep him off the walls, then," she said bravely. "You know how Bran loves to climb." Ned kissed the tears from her eyes before they could fall. "Thank you, my lady," he whispered. "This is hard, I know." "What of Jon Snow, my lord?" Maester Luwin asked. Catelyn tensed at the mention of the name. Ned felt the anger in her and pulled away. Many men fathered bastards. Catelyn had grown up with that knowledge. It came as no surprise to her in the first year of her marriage to learn that Ned had fathered a child on some girl chance met on a campaign. He had a man's needs, after all, and they had spent that year apart, Ned off at war in the south while she remained safe in her father's castle at Riverrun. Her thoughts were more of Robb, the infant at her breast, than of the husband she scarcely knew. He was welcome to whatever solace he might find between battles, and if his seed quickened, she expected he would see to the child's needs. He did more than that. The Starks were not like other men. Ned brought his bastard home with him and called him son for all the north to see. When the wars were over at last and Catelyn rode to Winterfell, Jon and his wet nurse had already taken up residence. That cut deep. Ned would not speak of the mother, not so much as a word, but a castle has no secrets, and Catelyn heard her maids repeating tales they heard from the lips of her husband's soldiers. They whispered of Sir Arthur Dayne, the Sword of the Morning, deadliest of the 7 knights of Eris's Kingsguard, and of how their young lord had slayed him in single combat. And they told afterward Ned had carried Sir Arthur's sword back to the beautiful young sister who awaited him in a castle called Starfall at the shores of the summer sea, the Lady Ashara Dayne, tall and fair with haunting violet eyes. It had taken her a fortnight to marshal her courage, but finally, in bed one night, Catelyn had asked her husband the truth of it, asked him to his face. That was the only time in all their years that Ned had ever frightened her. "Never ask me about Jon," he said, cold as ice. "He is my blood, and that is all you need to know. And now I will learn where you heard that name, my lady." She had pledged to obey. She told him, and from that day on the whispering had stopped, and Ashara Dayne's name was never heard in Winterfell again. Whoever Jon's mother had been, Ned must have loved her fiercely, for nothing Catelyn had said would persuade him to send the boy away. It was one thing she could never forgive him. She had come to love her husband with all her heart, but she had never found it in her to love Jon. She might have overlooked a dozen bastards for Ned's sake, so long as they were out of sight. Jon was never out of sight, and as he grew, he looked more like Ned than any of the true-born sons she bore him. Somehow that made it worse. "Jon must go," she said now. "He and Robb are close," Ned said. "I had hoped—" "He cannot stay here," Catelyn said, cutting him off. "He is your son, not mine. I will not have him." It was hard, she knew, but no less the truth. Ned would do the boy no kindness by leaving him here at Winterfell. The look Ned gave her was anguished. "You know I cannot take him south. There will be no place for him at court. A boy with a bastard's name? You know what they will say of him. He will be shunned." Catelyn armored her heart against the mute appeal in her husband's eyes. "They say your friend Robert has fathered a dozen bastards himself. And none of them have ever been seen at court," Ned blazed. "The Lannister woman has seen to that. How can you be so damnably cruel, Catelyn? He's only a boy. His fury was on him. He might have said more and worse, but Maester Luwin cut in. "Another solution presents itself," he said, his voice quiet. "Your brother Benjen came to me about Jon a few days ago. It seems the boy aspires to take the black." Ned looked shocked. "He asked to join the Night's Watch?" Catelyn said nothing. Let Ned work it out in his own mind. Her voice would not be welcome now. Yet gladly she would have kissed the maester just then. His was the perfect solution. Benjen Stark was a sworn brother. Jon would be a son to him, the child he would never have, and in time the boy would take the oath as well. He would father no sons who might someday contest with Catelyn's own grandchildren for Winterfell. Maester Luwin said, "There is great honor in service on the wall, my lord." "And even a bastard may rise high in the night's watch," Ned reflected. Still, his voice was troubled. "Jon is so young. If he asked this when he was a man grown, that would be one thing, but a boy of 14... "A hard sacrifice," Maester Luwin agreed. "Yet these are hard times, my lord. His road is no crueler than yours or your lady's." Catelyn thought of the 3 children she must lose. It was not easy keeping silent then. Ned turned away from them to gaze out the window, his long face silent and thoughtful. Finally he sighed and turned back. "Very well," he said to Maester Luwin. "I suppose it is for the best. I will speak to Ben." "When shall we tell Jon?" the Maester asked. "When I must. Preparations must be made. It will be a fortnight before we are ready to depart. I would sooner let Jon enjoy these last few days. Summer will end soon enough, and childhood as well. When the time comes, I will tell him myself."
Editing, Felix here. What you're going to hear next was recorded a few days after, so it does sound different, and that is why. I was also sick. I am currently sick, so, yeah.
Chapter 7, Arya I. Arya's stitches were crooked again. She frowned down at them with dismay and glanced over to where her sister Sansa sat among the other girls. Sansa's needlework was exquisite. Everyone said so. "Sansa's work is as pretty as she is," Septa Mordane told their lady mother once. "She has such fine, delicate hands." When Lady Catelyn had asked about Arya, the Septa had sniffed. "Arya has the hands of a blacksmith." Arya glanced furtively across the room, worried that Septa Mordane might have read her thoughts, but the Septa was paying her no attention today. She was sitting with the Princess Myrcella, all smiles and admiration. It was not often that the Septa was privileged to instruct a royal princess in the womanly arts, as she had said when the Queen brought Myrcella to join them. Arya thought that Myrcella's stitches looked a little crooked too, but you would never know it from the way Septa Mordane was cooing. She studied her own work again, looking for some way to salvage it, then sighed and put down the needle. She looked glumly at her sister. Sansa was chatting away happily as she worked. Beth Castle, Sir Roderick's little girl, was sitting by her feet, listening to every word she said, and Jane Poole was leaning over to whisper something in her ear. "What are you talking about?" Arya asked suddenly. Jane gave her a startled look, then giggled. Sansa looked abashed. Beth blushed, but no one answered. "Tell me," Arya said. Jane glanced over to make certain that Septa Mordane was not listening. Myrcella said something then, and the Septa laughed along with the rest of the ladies. "We were talking about the prince," Sansa said, her voice soft as a kiss. Arya knew which prince she meant. Joffrey, of course, the tall, handsome one. Sansa got to sit with him at the feast. Arya had to sit with the little fat one, naturally. "Joffrey likes your sister," Jane whispered, proud as if she had something to do with it. She was the daughter of Winterfell's steward and Sansa's dearest friend. "He told her she was very beautiful." "He's going to marry her," little Beth said dreamily, hugging herself. "Then Sansa will be queen of all the realm." Sansa had the grace to blush. She blushed prettily. She did everything prettily, Arya thought, with a dull resentment. "Beth, you shouldn't make up stories," Sansa corrected the younger girl, gently stroking her hair to take the harshness out of her words. She looked at Arya. "What did you think of Prince Joff, sister? He's very gallant, don't you think?" "Jon says he looks like a girl," Arya said. Sansa sighed as she stitched. "Poor Jon," she said. "He gets jealous because he's a bastard." "He's our brother," Arya said, much too loudly. Her voice cut through the afternoon quiet of the tower room. Septa Mordane raised her eyes. She had a bony face, sharp eyes, and a thin, lipless mouth made for frowning. It was frowning now. "What are you talking about, children?" "Our half-brother," Sansa corrected, soft and precise. She smiled for the Septa. "Arya and I were remarking on how pleased we were to have the princess with us today," she said. Septa Mordain nodded. Indeed, a great honor for us all. Princess Marcella smiled uncertainly at the compliment. Arya, why aren't you at work? The Septa asked. She rose to her feet, starched skirts rustling as she started across the room. Let me see your stitches. Arya wanted to scream. It was just like Sansa to go and attract the Septa's attention. Here, she said, surrendering up her work. The Septa examined the fabric. Arya, 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 she said, this will not do at all. Everyone was looking at her. It was too much. Sansa was too well-bred to smile at her sister's disgrace, but Jane was smirking on her behalf. Even Princess Marcella looked sorry for her. Arya felt tears filling her eyes. She pushed herself out of her chair and bolted for the door. Septa Mordain called after her, Arya, come back here. Don't you take another step. Your lady mother will hear of this. In front of our royal princess, too. You'll shame us all. Arya stopped at the door and turned back, biting her lip. The tears were running down her cheeks now. She managed a stiff little bow to Marcella. By your leave, my lady? Marcella blinked at her and looked to her ladies for guidance. But if she was uncertain, Septa Mordain was not. Just where do you think you're going, Arya? The Septa demanded. Arya glared at her. I have to go shoe a horse, she said sweetly, taking a brief satisfaction in the shock on the Septa's face. Then she whirled and made her exit, running down the steps as fast as her feet would take her. It wasn't fair. Sansa had everything. Sansa was 2 years older. Maybe by the time Arya had been born, there had been nothing left. Often it felt that way. Sansa could sew and dance and sing. She wrote poetry. She knew how to dress. She played the high harp and the bells. Worse, she was beautiful. Sansa had gotten their mother's fine high cheekbones and the thick auburn hair of the Tullys. Arya took after their lord father. Her hair was a lusterless brown, and her face was long and solemn. Jane used to call her Arya Horseface, and neigh whenever she came near. It hurt that the one thing Arya could do better than her sister was ride a horse. Well, that and manage a household. Sansa had never had much of a head for figures. If she did marry Prince Joff, Arya hoped for his sake that he had a good steward. Nymeria was waiting for her in the guard's room at the base of the stairs. She bounded to her feet as soon as she caught sight of Arya. Arya grinned. The wolf pup loved her, even if no one else did. They went everywhere together, and Nymeria slept in her room at the foot of her bed. If Mother had not forbidden it, Arya would gladly have taken the wolf with her to needlework. Let Septa Mordain complain about her stitches then. Nymeria nipped eagerly at her hand as Arya untied her. She had yellow eyes. When they caught the sunlight, they gleamed like 2 golden coins. Arya had named her after the warrior queen of the Rhoyne, who had led her people across the narrow sea. That had been a great scandal, too. Sansa, of course, had named her pup Lady. Arya made a face and hugged the wolfling tight. Nymeria licked her ear, and she giggled. By now, Septa Mordain would certainly have sent word to her lady mother. If she went to her room, they would find her. Arya did not care to be found. She had a better notion. The boys were at practice in the yard. She wanted to see Robb put gallant Prince Joffrey flat on his back. Come, she whispered to Nymeria. She got up and ran, the wolf coming hard at her heels. There was a window in the covered bridge between the armory and the great keep, where you had a view of the whole yard. That was where they were headed. They arrived, flushed and breathless, to find Jon seated on the sill, one leg drawn up languidly to his chin. He was watching the action, so absorbed that he seemed unaware of her approach, until his white wolf moved to meet them. Nymeria stalked closer on wary feet. Ghost, already larger than his litter mates, smelled her, gave her ear a careful nip, and settled back down. Jon gave her a curious look. Shouldn't you be working on your stitches, little sister? Arya made a face at him. I wanted to see them fight. He smiled. Come here, then. Arya smiled up on the window and sat beside him, to a chorus of thuds and grunts from the yard below. To her disappointment, it was the young boys drilling. Bran was so heavily padded he looked as though he had belted on a feather belt, a feather bed, and Prince Tommen, who was plump to begin with, seemed positively round. They were huffing and puffing and hitting at each other with padded wooden swords under a watchful eye of old Sir Roderick Castle, the master-at-arms, a great stout keg of a man with magnificent white-cheek whiskers. A dozen spectators, man and boy, were calling out encouragement, Rob's voice the loudest among them. She spotted Theon Greyjoy beside him, his black doublet emblazoned with the golden kraken of his house, a look of wry contempt on his face. Both of the combatants were staggering. Arya judged that they had been at it a while. "A shade more exhausting than needlework," Jon observed. "A shade more fun than needlework," Arya gave back at him. Jon grinned, reached over, and messed up her hair. Arya flushed. They had always been close. Jon had their father's face, as she did. They were the only ones. Robb and Sansa and Bran and even little Rickon all took after the Tullys, with easy smiles and fire in their hair. When Arya had been little, she had been afraid that meant that she was a bastard too. It had been Jon she had gone to in her fear, and Jon who had reassured her. "Why aren't you down in the yard?" Arya asked him. He gave her a half-smile. "Bastards are not allowed to damage young princes," he said. "Any bruises they take in the practice yard must come from true-born swords." Oh, Arya felt abashed. She should have realized. For the second time today, Arya reflected that life was not fair. She watched her little brother whack at Tommen. "I could do just as good as Bran," she said. "He's only 7. I'm 9. Jon looked her over with all his 14-year-old wisdom. "You're too skinny," he said. He took her arm to feel her muscle. Then he sighed and shook his head. "I doubt you could even lift a long sword, little sister, never mind swing one." Arya snatched back her arm and glared at him. Jon messed up her hair again. They watched Bran and Tommen circle each other. "You see Prince Joffrey?" Jon asked. She hadn't, not at first glance, but when she looked again she found him to the back, under the shade of a high stone wall. He was surrounded by men she did not recognize, young squires in the livery of Lannister and Baratheon, strangers all. There were a few older men among them, knights, she surmised. "Look at the arms on his surcoat," Jon suggested. Arya looked. An ornate shield had been embroidered on the prince's padded surcoat. No doubt the needlework was exquisite. The arms were divided down the middle. On one side was the crowned stag of the royal house. On the other was the lion of Lannister. "The Lannisters are proud," Jon observed. "You'd think the royal sigil would be sufficient, but no. He makes his mother's house equal in honor to the king's." "The woman is important too," Arya protested. Jon chuckled. "Perhaps you should do the same thing, little sister. Wed Tully to Starks in your arms." "A wolf with a fish in its mouth." It made her laugh. "That would look silly. Besides, if a girl can't fight, why should she have a coat of arms?" Jon shrugged. "Girls get the arms, but not the swords. Bastards get the swords, but not the arms. I did not make the rules, little sister." There was a shout from the courtyard below. Prince Tommen was rolling in the dust, trying to get up and failing. All the padding made him look like a turtle on its back. Bran was standing over him with upraised wooden sword, ready to whack him again once he regained his feet. The men began to laugh. "Enough," Sir Roderick called out. He gave the prince a hand and yanked him back to his feet. "Well fought. Lou, Donis, help them out their armor." He looked around. "Prince Joffrey, Robb, will you go another round?" Robb, already sweaty from a previous bout, moved forward eagerly. "Gladly." Joffrey moved into the sunlight in response to Roderick's summons. His hair shone like spun gold. He looked bored. "This is a game for children, Sir Roderick." Theon Greyjoy gave a sudden bark of laughter. "You are children," he said derisively. "Robb may be a child," Joffrey said. "I am a prince, and I grow tired of swatting at Starks with a play sword." "You got more swats than you gave, Joff," Robb said. "Are you afraid?" Prince Joffrey looked at him. "Oh, terrified," he said. "You're so much older." Some of the Lannister men laughed. Jon looked down on the scene with a frown. "Joffrey is truly a little shit," he told Arya. Sir Roderick tugged thoughtfully at his white whiskers. "What are you suggesting?" he asked the prince. "Lives steal." "Done," Robb shot back. "You'll be sorry." The master-at-arms put a hand on Robb's shoulder to quiet him.
Live steel is too dangerous. I will permit you tourney swords with blunted edges. Joffrey said nothing, but a man strange to Arya, a tall knight with black hair and burn scars on his face, pushed forward in front of the prince. This is your prince. Who are you to tell him that he may not have an edge on his sword, sir? Master at arms of Winterfell Clegane, and you would do well not to forget it. Are you training women here? The burned man wanted to know. He was muscled like a bull. I'm training knights, Sir Roderick said pointedly. They will have steel when they are ready, when they are of an age. The burned man looked at Robb. How old are you, boy? 14, Robb said. I killed a man at 12. You can be sure it was not with a blunt sword. Arya could see Robb bristle. His pride was wounded. He turned on Sir Roderick. Let me do it. I can beat him. Beat him with a tourney blade, then, Sir Roderick said. Joffrey shrugged. Come and see me when you're older, Stark, if you're not too old. There was laughter from the Lannister men. Robb's curses rang out in the yard. Arya covered her mouth in shock. Theon Greyjoy seized Robb's arm to keep him away from the prince. Sir Roderick tugged at his whiskers in dismay. Joffrey feigned a yawn and turned to his younger brother. Come, Tommen, he said. The hour of play is done. Leave the children to their frolics. That brought more laughter from the Lannisters, more curses from Robb. Sir Roderick's face was beet red with fury under the white of his whiskers. Theon kept Robb locked in an iron grip until the princes and their party were safely away. Jon watched them leave, and Arya watched Jon. His face had grown as still as the pool at the heart of the Godswood. Finally, he climbed down off of the window. The show is done, he said. He bent to scratch Ghost behind the ears. The white wolf rose and rubbed against him. You had best run back to your room, little sister. Scepter Mordain will surely be lurking. The longer you hide, the sterner the penance. You'll be sewing all through winter. When the spring thaw comes, they will find your body with a needle still locked tight between your frozen fingers. Arya didn't think it was funny. I hate needlework, she said with a passion. It's not fair. Nothing is fair, Jon said. He messed up her hair again and walked away from her, Ghost moving silently beside him. Nymeria started to follow too, then stopped and came back when she saw that Arya was not coming. Reluctantly, she turned in the other direction. It was worse than Jon had thought. It wasn't Septa Mordain waiting in her room. It was Scepter Mordain and her mother. Okay, chapter 8, I believe. Bran II. The hunt left at dawn. The king wanted wild boar at the feast tonight. Prince Joffrey rode with his father, so Robb had been allowed to join the hunters as well. Uncle Benjen, Jory, Theon Greyjoy, Sir Roderick, and even the Queen's funny little brother had all ridden out with them. It was the last hunt, after all. On the morrow, they left for the south. Bran had been left behind with Jon and the girls and Rickon, but Rickon was only a baby, and the girls were only girls, and Jon and his wolf were nowhere to be found. Bran did not look for him very hard. He thought Jon was angry at him. Jon seemed to be angry at everyone these days. Bran did not know why. He was going with Uncle Ben to the Wall to join the Night's Watch. That was almost as good as going south with the king. Robb was the one they were leaving behind, not Jon. For days, Bran could scarcely wait to be off. He was going to ride the King's Road on a horse of his own, not a pony, but a real horse. His father would be the hand of the king, and they were going to live in the Red Castle at King's Landing, the castle the dragon lords had built. Old Nan said there were ghosts there, and dungeons where terrible things had been done, and dragon heads on the walls. It gave Bran a shiver just to think of it, but he was not afraid. How could he be afraid? His father would be with him, and the king with all his knights and sworn swords. Bran was going to be a knight himself one day, one of the king's guard. Old Nan said they were the finest swords in all the realm. There were only 7 of them, and they wore white armor and had no wives or children, but lived only to serve the king. Bran knew all of the stories. Their names were like music to him. Serwyn of the Mirror Shield, Sir Ryman Redwine, Prince Aemon the Dragon Knight. the twins, Sir Eric and Sir Eric, who had died on one another's swords hundreds of years ago when brother fought sister in the war the singers called the Dance of the Dragons. The White Bull, Gerald Hightower, Sir Arthur Dane, the Sword of the Morning, Barristan the Bold. 2 of the King's Guard had come north with King Robert. Bran had watched them with fascination, never quite daring to speak to them. Sir Boros was a bald man with a jowly face, and Sir Meryn had droopy eyes and a beard the color of rust. Sir Jaime Lannister looked more like the knights in the stories, and he was of the King's Guard too, but Robb said that he had killed the old Mad King and shouldn't count anymore. The greatest living knight was Sir Barristan Selmy, Barristan the Bold, the Lord Commander of the King's Guard. Father had promised that they would meet Sir Barristan when they reached King's Landing, and Bran had been marking the days on his wall, eager to depart, to see a world he had only dreamed of, and begin a life he could scarcely imagine. Yet now that the last day was at hand, suddenly Bran felt lost. Winterfell had been the only home he had ever known. His father had told him that he ought to say his farewells today, and he had tried. After the hunt had ridden out, he wandered through the castle with his wolf at his side, intending to visit the ones who would be left behind. Old Nan and Gage the cook, Micken and his smithy, Hodor the stable boy, who smiled so much and took care of his pony and never said anything but Hodor, the man in the glass gardens who gave him a blackberry when he came to visit. But it was no good. He had gone to the stable first and seen his pony there in its stall, except it wasn't his pony anymore. He was getting a real horse and leaving the pony behind, and all of a sudden Bran just wanted to sit down and cry. He turned and ran off before Hodor and the other stable boys could see the tears in his eyes. That was the end of his farewells. Instead, Bran spent the morning alone in the Godswood, trying to teach his wolf to fetch a stick, and failing. The wolfling was smarter than any of the hounds in Father's kennel, and Bran would have sworn he understood every word that was said to him, but he showed very little interest in chasing sticks. He was still trying to decide on a name. Robb was calling his Grey Wind because he ran so fast. Sansa had named hers Lady, and Arya named hers after some old witch queen from the songs, and little Rickon called his Shaggy Dog, which Bran thought was a pretty stupid name for a dire wolf. Jon's wolf, the white one, was Ghost. Bran wished he had thought of that first, even though his wolf wasn't white. He had tried 100 names in the last fortnight, but none of them sounded right. Finally, he got tired of the stick game and decided to go climbing. He hadn't been up to the broken tower for weeks with everything that had happened, and this might be his last chance. He raced across the Godswood, taking the long way around to avoid the pool where the heart tree grew. The heart tree had always frightened him. Trees ought not to have eyes, Bran thought, or leaves that looked like hands. His wolf came sprinting at his heels. "You stay here," he told him at the base of the sentinel tree near the armory wall. "Lie down. That's right. Now stay." The wolf did as he was told. Bran scratched him behind the ears, then turned away, jumped, grabbed a low branch, and pulled himself up. He was halfway up the tree, moving easily from limb to limb, when the wolf got to his feet and began to howl. Bran looked back down. His wolf fell silent, staring up at him through slitted yellow eyes. A strange chill went through him. He began to climb again. Once more the wolf howled. "Quiet!" he yelled. "Sit down! Stay! You're worse than Mother!" The howling chased him all the way up the tree, until finally he jumped off onto the armory roof and out of sight. The rooftops of Winterfell were Bran's second home. His mother often said that Bran could climb before he could walk. Bran could not remember when he first learned to walk, but he could not remember when he started to climb either, so he supposed it must be true. To a boy, Winterfell was a gray stone labyrinth of walls and towers and courtyards and tunnels spreading out in all directions. In the older parts of the castle, the halls slanted up and down, so you couldn't even be sure what floor you were on. The place had grown over the centuries like some monstrous stone tree, Maester Luwin told him once, and its branches were gnarled and thick and twisted, its roots sunk deep into the earth. When he got out from under it and scrambled near the sky, Bran could see all of Winterfell in a glance. He liked the way it looked, spread out beneath him, only birds wheeling over his head while all the life of the castle went on below. Bran could perch for hours among the shapeless, rain-worn
rain-worn gargoyles that brooded over the first keep, watching it all. The men drilling with wood and steel in the yard, the cooks tending their vegetables in the glass garden, restless dogs running back and forth in the kennels, the silence of the godswood, the girls gossiping behind the washing well. It made him feel like he was lord of the castle in a way that even Robb would never know. It taught him Winterfell's secrets, too. The builders had not even leveled the earth. There were hills and valleys behind the walls of Winterfell. There was a covered bridge that went from the 4th floor of the bell tower across to the 2nd floor of the rookery. Bran knew about that, and he knew you could get inside the inner wall by the south gate, climb 3 floors, and run all the way around Winterfell through a narrow tunnel in the stone, and then come out on ground level at the north gate, with 100 feet of wall looming over you. Even Maester Luwin didn't know that, Bran was convinced. His mother was terrified that one day Bran would slip off a wall and kill himself. He told her that he wouldn't, but she never believed him. Once she made him promise that he would stay on the ground. He had managed to keep that promise for almost a fortnight, miserable every day, until one night he had gone out the window of his bedroom while his brothers were fast asleep. He confessed his crime the next day in a fit of guilt. Lord Eddard ordered him to the Godswood to cleanse himself. Guards were posted to see that Bran remained there alone all night to reflect on his disobedience. The next morning, Bran was nowhere to be seen. They finally found him fast asleep in the upper branches of the tallest sentinel in the grove. As angry as he was, his father could not help but laugh. "You are not my son," he told Bran when they fetched him down. "You're a squirrel. So be it. If you must climb, then climb, but try not to let your mother see you." Bran did his best, although he did not think he ever really fooled her. Since his father would not forbid it, she turned to others. Old Nan told him a story about a bad little boy who climbed too high and was struck down by lightning, and how afterwards the crows came to peck out his eyes. Bran was not impressed. There were crows' nests atop the broken tower, where no one ever went but him, and sometimes he filled his pockets with corn before he climbed up there, and the crows ate it right out of his hand. None of them had ever shown the slightest bit of interest in pecking out his eyes. Later, Maester Luwin built a little pottery boy and dressed him in Bran's clothes, and flung him off the wall into the yard below to demonstrate what would happen if Bran had fell. What would happen to Bran if he fell. That had been fun, but afterward Bran just looked at the maester and said, "I'm not made of clay, and anyhow, I never fall." Then for a while the guards would chase him whenever they saw him on the roofs, and try to haul him down. That was the best time of all. It was like playing a game with his brothers, except that Bran always won. None of the guards could climb half so well as Bran, not even Jory. Most of the time they never saw him anyway. People never looked up. That was another thing he liked about climbing. It was almost like being invisible. He liked how it felt, too, pulling himself up a wall, stone by stone, fingers and toes digging hard into the small crevices between. He always took off his boots and went barefoot when he climbed. It made him feel as if he had 4 hands instead of 2. He liked the deep, sweet ache it left in his muscles afterward. He liked the way the air tasted way up high, sweet and cold as a winter peach. He liked the birds, the crows in the broken tower, the tiny little sparrows that nested in cracks between the stones, the ancient owl that slept in the dusty loft above the old armory. Bran knew them all. Most of all, he liked going places that no one else could go, and seeing the grey sprawl of Winterfell in a way that no one else ever saw it. It made the whole castle Bran's secret place. His favorite haunt was the broken tower. Once it had been a watchtower, the tallest in Winterfell. A long time ago, 100 years before even his father had been born, a lightning strike had set it afire. The top third of the structure had collapsed inward, and the tower had never been rebuilt. Sometimes his father sent ratters into the base of the tower to clean out the nests they always found among the jumble of fallen stones and charred and rotten beams, but no one ever got up to the jagged top of the structure now, except for Bran and the crows. He knew 2 ways to get there. You could climb straight up the side of the tower itself, but the stones were loose, the mortar that held them together long gone to ash, and Bran never liked to put his full weight on them. The best way was to start from the Godswood, shinny up Yeah, it says shinny, up the tall sentinel, and cross over the armory and the guards' hall, leaping roof to roof, barefoot so the guards wouldn't hear you overhead. That brought you up to the blind side of the first keep, the oldest part of the castle, a squat, round fortress that was taller than it looked. Only rats and spiders lived there now, but the old stones still made for good climbing. You could go straight up to where the gargoyles leaned out blindly over empty space and swing from gargoyle to gargoyle, hand over hand, around to the north side. From there, if you really stretched, you could reach out and pull yourself over to the broken tower where it leaned close. The last part was to scramble up the blackened stones to the eyrie, no more than 10 feet, and then the crows would come round to see if you'd brought any corn. Bran was moving from gargoyle to gargoyle with the ease of long practice when he heard the voices. He was so startled he almost lost his grip. The first keep had been empty all his life. "I do not like it," a woman was saying. There was a row of windows beneath him, and the voice was driving out of the last window on this side. "You should be the hand." "God forbid," a man's voice replied lazily. "It's not an honor I'd even want. There's far too much work involved." Bran hung, listening, suddenly afraid to go on. They might glimpse his feet if he tried to swing by. "Don't you see the danger this puts us in?" the woman said. "Robert loves the man like a brother." "Robert can barely stomach his brothers. Not that I blame him. Stannis would be enough to give anyone indigestion." "Don't play the fool. Stannis and Renly are one thing, and Eddard Stark is quite another. Robert will listen to Stark. Damn them both. I should have insisted that he name you, but I was certain Stark would refuse him." "We ought to count ourselves fortunate," the man said. "The king might as easily have named one of his brothers, or even Littlefinger, God's help us. Give me honorable enemies rather than ambitious ones, and I'll sleep more easily by night." They were talking about father, Bran realized. He wanted to hear more. A few more feet, but they would see him if he swung out in front of the window. "We will have to watch him carefully," the woman said. "I would sooner watch you," the man said. He sounded bored. "Come back here." Lord Eddard had never taken an interest in anything that happened south of the Neck, the woman said. "Never! I tell you, he means to move against us. Why else would he leave the seat of his power?" 100 reasons. Duty, honor. He yearns to write his name large across the book of history, or to get away from his wife, or both. Perhaps he just wants to be warm for once in his life. His wife is Lady Arryn's sister. It's a wonder Lysa was not here to greet us with her accusations. Bran looked down. There was a narrow ledge beneath the window, only a few inches wide. He tried to lower himself toward it. Too far. He would never reach. "You fret too much. Lysa Arryn is a frightened cow. That frightened cow shared Jon Arryn's bed. If she knew anything, she would have gone to Robert before she fled King's Landing. When he had already agreed to foster that weakling son of hers at Casterly Rock? I think not. She knew the boy's life would be hostage to her silence. She may grow bolder now that she's safe atop the Eyrie." "Mothers." The man made the word sound like a curse. "I think birthing does something to your minds. You're all mad." He laughed, and it was a bitter sound. "Let Lady Arryn grow as bold as she likes. Whatever she knows, whatever she thinks she knows, she has no proof." He paused a moment. "Or does she?" "Do you think the king will require proof?" the woman said. "I tell you, he loves me not." "And whose fault is that, sweet sister?" Bran studied the ledge. He could drop down. It was too narrow to land on, but if he could catch hold as he fell past, pull himself up, except that might make a noise, draw them to the window. He was not sure what he was hearing, but he knew it was not meant for his ears. "You are as blind as Robert," the woman was saying. If you mean I see the same thing, yes," the man said. "I see a man who would sooner die than betray his king." "He betrayed one already, or have you forgotten?" the woman said. "Oh, I don't deny he's loyal to Robert. That's
obvious. What happens when Robert dies and Joff takes the throne? And the sooner that comes to pass, the safer we'll all be. My husband grows more restless every day. Having Stark beside him will only make him worse. He's still in love with the sister, the insipid little dead 16-year-old. How long till he decides to put me aside for some new Lyanna? Bran was suddenly very frightened. He wanted nothing so much as to go back the way he had come, to find his brothers. Only what would he tell them? He had to get closer, Bran realized. He had to see who was talking. The man sighed. He should think less about the future and more about the pleasures at hand. "Stop that," the woman said. Bran heard the sudden slap of flesh on flesh, then the man's laughter. Bran pulled himself up, climbed over the gargoyle, crawled out onto the roof. This was the easy way. He moved across the roof to the next gargoyle, right above the window of the room where they were talking. "All this talk is getting very tiresome, sister," the man said. "Come here and be quiet." Bran sat astride the gargoyle, tightened his legs around it, and swung himself around upside down. He hung by his legs and slowly stretched his head down toward the window. The world looked strange upside down. A courtyard swam dizzily below him, its stones still wet with melted snow. Bran looked inside the window. Inside the room, a man and a woman were wrestling. They were both naked. Bran could not tell who they were. The man's back was to him, and his body screened the woman from a view as he pushed her up against a wall. There were soft, wet sounds. Bran realized they were kissing. He watched, wide-eyed and frightened, his breath tight in his throat. The man had a hand down between her legs, and he must have been hurting her there, because the woman started to moan low in her throat. "Stop it," she said. "Stop it, oh please." But her voice was low and weak, and she did not push him away. Her hands buried themselves in his hair, his tangled golden hair, and pulled his face down to her breast. Bran saw her face. Her eyes were closed and her mouth was open, moaning. Her golden hair swung from side to side as her head moved back and forth, but still he recognized the queen. He must have made a noise, because suddenly her eyes opened and she was staring right at him. She screamed. Everything happened at once then. The woman pushed the man away wildly, shouting and pointing. Bran tried to pull himself up, bending double as he reached for the gargoyle. He was in too much of a hurry. His hand scraped uselessly against smooth stone, and in his panic his leg slipped, and suddenly he was falling. There was an instant of vertigo, a sickening lurch as the window flashed past. He shot out a hand, grabbed for the ledge, lost it, caught it again with his other hand. He swung against the building hard. The impact took the breath out of him. Bran dangled, one-handed, panting. Faces appeared in the window above him. The queen. And now Bran recognized the man beside her. They looked as much alike as reflections in a mirror. "He saw us," the woman said shrilly. "So he did," the man said. Bran's fingers started to slip. He grabbed the ledge with his other hand. Fingernails dug into unyielding stone. The man reached down. "Take my hand," he said, "before you fall." Bran seized his arm and held on tight with all his strength. The man yanked him up to the ledge. "What are you doing?" the woman demanded. The man ignored her. He was very strong. He stood Bran up on the sill. "How old are you, boy?" "7, Bran said, shaking with relief. His fingers had dug deep gouges in the man's forearm. He let go sheepishly. The man looked over at the woman. "The things I do for love," he said with loathing. He gave Bran a shove. Screaming, Bran went backward out the window into empty air. There was nothing to grab onto. The courtyard rushed up to meet him. Somewhere off in the distance, a wolf was howling. Crows circled the broken tower above, waiting for corn. That is just about where it starts to get really good. I think I'll do one more chapter just because it's Tyrion's chapter next, and his chapters are great. And I love this chapter. I think it's incredible. So, chapter 8, I believe. Tyrion I. If you give me just a moment. Somewhere in the great stone maze of Winterfell, a wolf howled. The sound hung over the castle like the flag of mourning. Tyrion Lannister looked up from his books and shivered, though the library was snug and warm. Something about the howling of a wolf took a man right out of here and now and left him in the dark forest of the mind, running naked before the pack. When the direwolf howled again, Tyrion shut the heavy leather-bound cover on the book he was reading, 100-year-old discourse on the changing of the seasons by a long-dead maester. He covered a yawn with the back of his hand. His reading lamp was flickering, its oil all but gone, as dawn light leaked through the high windows. He had been at it all night, but that was nothing new. Tyrion Lannister was not much a one for sleeping. His legs were stiff and sore as he eased down off the bench. He massaged some life back into them and limped heavily to the table where the Septon was snoring softly, his head pillowed on an open book in front of him. Tyrion glanced at the title. A Life of the Grand Maester Aethelmere, no wonder. "Chael," he said softly. The young man jerked up, blinking, confused, the crystal of his order swinging wildly on its silver chain. "I'm off to break my fast. See that you return the books to the shelves. Be gentle with the Valyrian scrolls. The parchment is very dry. Ermidon's Engines of War is quite rare, and yours is the only complete copy I've ever seen." Chael gaped at him, still half asleep. Patiently, Tyrion repeated his instructions, then clapped the Septon on the shoulder and left him to his tasks. Outside, Tyrion swallowed a lungful of the cold morning air and began his laborious descent of the steep stone steps that corkscrewed around the exterior of the library tower. It was slow going. The steps were cut high and narrow, while his legs were short and twisted. The rising sun had not yet cleared the walls of Winterfell, but the men were already hard at it in the yard below. Sandor Clegane's rasping voice drifted up to him. "The boy is a long time dying. I wish you would be quicker about it." Tyrion glanced down and saw the hounds standing with young Joffrey as squires swarmed around them. "At least he dies quietly," the prince replied. "It's the wolf that makes the noise. I could scarce sleep last night." Clegane cast a long shadow across the hard-packed earth as his squire lowered the black helm over his head. "I could silence the creature, if it please you," he said through his open visor. His boy placed a long sword in his hand. He tested the weight of it, slicing at the cold morning air. Behind him, the yard rang to the clangor of steel on steel. The notion seemed to delight the prince. "Send a dog to kill a dog!" he exclaimed. "Winterfell is so infested with wolves, the Starks would never miss one." Tyrion hopped off the last stop onto the yard. "I beg to differ, nephew," he said. "The Starks can count past 6, unlike some princes I might name." Joffrey had the grace at least to blush. "A voice from nowhere," Sandor said. He peered through his helm, looking this way and that. "Spirits of the air!" The prince laughed, as he always laughed when his bodyguard did this mummer's farce. Tyrion was used to it. "Down here?" The tall man peered at the ground and pretended to notice him. "The little Lord Tyrion," he said. "My pardons, I did not see you standing there." "I'm in no mood for your insolence today." Tyrion turned to his nephew. "Joffrey, it is past time you called on Lord Eddard and his lady to offer them your comfort." Joffrey looked as petulant as only a boy prince can look. "What good will my comfort do them?" "None," Tyrion said. "Yet it is expected of you. Your absence has been noted." "The Stark boy is nothing to me," Joffrey said. "I cannot abide the wailing of women." Tyrion Lannister reached up and slapped his nephew hard across the face. The boy's cheek began to redden. "One word," Tyrion said, "and I will hit you again." "I'm going to tell Mother!" Joffrey exclaimed. Tyrion hit him again. Now both cheeks flamed. "You tell your mother," Tyrion told him, "but first you get yourself to Lord and Lady Stark, and you fall to your knees in front of them, and you tell them how very sorry you are, and that you are at their service if there is the slightest thing you can do for them or theirs in their desperate hour, and that all your prayers go with them. Do you understand? Do you?" The boy looked as though he was going to cry. Instead, he managed a weak nod. Then he turned and fled headlong from the yard, holding his cheek. Tyrion watched him run.
A shadow fell across his face. He turned to find Clegane looming overhead like a cliff. His soot-dark armor seemed to blot out the sun. He had lowered the visor on his helm. It was fashioned in the likeness of a snarling black hound, fearsome to behold, but Tyrion had always thought it a great improvement over Clegane's hideously burned face. "The prince will remember that, little lord," the hound warned him. The helm turned his laugh into a hollow rumble. "I pray he does," Tyrion Lannister replied. "If he forgets, be a good dog and remind him." He glanced around the courtyard. "Do you know where I might find my brother?" "Breaking fast with the queen." "Ah," Tyrion said. He gave Sandor Clegane a perfunctory nod and walked away as briskly as his stunted legs would carry him, whistling. He pitied the first night to try the hound today. The man did have a temper. A cold, cheerless meal had been laid out in the morning room of the guest house. Jaime sat at table with Cersei and the children, talking in low, hushed voices. "Is Robert still abed?" Tyrion asked as he seated himself uninvited at the table. His sister peered at him with the same expression of faint distaste she had worn since the day he was born. "The king has not slept at all," she told him. "He is with Lord Eddard. He has taken their sorrow deeply to heart." He has a large heart, our Robert," Jaime said with a lazy smile. There was very little that Jaime took seriously. Tyrion knew that about his brother, and forgave it. During all the terrible long years of his childhood, only Jaime had ever shown him the smallest measure of affection or respect, and for that Tyrion was willing to forgive him most anything. A servant approached. "Bread," Tyrion told him, "and 2 of those little fish, and a mug of that good dark beer to wash them down. Oh, and some bacon. Burn it until it turns black." The man bowed and moved off. Tyrion looked back to his siblings. Twins, male and female. They looked very much the part this morning. Both had chosen a deep green that matched their eyes. Their blonde curls were all a fashionable tumble, and gold ornaments shone at wrists and fingers and throats. Tyrion wondered what it would be like to have a twin, and decided that he would rather not know. Bad enough to face himself in a looking-glass every day, another him was a thought too dreadful to contemplate. Prince Tommen spoke up. "Do you have news of Bran, Uncle?" "I stopped by the sick room last night," Tyrion announced. "There was no change. The maester thought that a hopeful sign. "I don't want Bran to die," Tommen said timorously? He was a sweet boy. Not like his brother, but then Jaime and Tyrion were somewhat less than peas in a pod themselves. "Lord Eddard has a brother named Brandon as well," Jaime mused. "One of the hostages murdered by Targaryen. It seems to be an unlucky name." "Oh, not so unlucky as all that, surely," Tyrion said. The servant brought his plate. He ripped off a chunk of black bread. Cersei was studying him warily. "What do you mean?" Tyrion gave her a crooked smile. "Why, only that Tommen may get his wish. The maester thinks the boy may yet live." He took a sip of beer. Myrcella gave a happy gasp, and Tommen smiled nervously, but it was not the children Tyrion was watching. The glance that passed between Jaime and Cersei lasted no more than a second, but he did not miss it. Then his sister dropped her gaze to the table. "That is no mercy. These northern gods are cruel to let the child linger in such pain." "What were the maester's words?" Jaime asked. The bacon crunched when he bit into it. Tyrion chewed thoughtfully for a moment and said, "He thinks that if the boy were going to die, he would have done so already. It has been 4 days with no change." "Will Bran get better, Uncle?" little Myrcella asked. She had all of her mother's beauty and none of her nature. "His back is broken, little one," Tyrion told her. "The fall shattered his legs as well. They keep him alive with honey and water, or he would starve to death. Perhaps if he wakes, he will be able to eat real food, but he will never walk again." "If he wakes," Cersei repeated. "Is that likely?" "The gods alone know," Tyrion told her. "The maester only hopes." He chewed some more bread. "I would swear that wolf of his is keeping the boy alive. The creature is outside his window day and night, howling. Every time they chase it away, it returns. The maester said they closed the window once to shut out the noise, and Bran seemed to weaken. When they opened it again, his heart beat stronger."
The queen shuddered. "There is something unnatural about those animals," she said. "They are dangerous. I will not have any of them coming south with us." Jaime said, "You'll have a hard time stopping them, sister. They follow those girls everywhere." Tyrion started on his fish. "Are you leaving soon, then?" "Not near soon enough," Cersei said. Then she frowned. "Are we leaving?" she echoed. "What about you? Gods, don't tell me you are staying here." Tyrion shrugged. "Benjen Stark is returning to the Night's Watch with his brother's bastard. I have a mind to go with them and see this wall we have all heard so much of." Jaime smiled. "I hope you're not thinking of taking the black on us, sweet brother." Tyrion laughed. "What, me, celibate? The whores would go begging from Dorne to Casterly Rock. No, I just want to stand on the top of the wall and piss off the edge of the world." Cersei stood abruptly. "The children don't need to hear this filth. Tommen, Myrcella, come." She strode briskly from the morning room, her train and her pups trailing behind her. Jaime Lannister regarded his brother thoughtfully with those cool green eyes. "Stark will never consent to leave Winterfell with his son lingering in the shadow of death." "He will if Robert commands it," Tyrion said, "and Robert will command it. There's nothing Lord Eddard can do for the boy in any case." "He could end his torment," Jaime said. "I would, if it were my son. It would be a mercy." "I advise against putting that suggestion to Lord Eddard, sweet brother," Tyrion said. "He would not take it kindly. Even if the boy does live, he will be a cripple. Worse than a cripple, a grotesque. Give me a good, clean death." Tyrion replied with a shrug that accentuated the twist of his shoulders. "Speaking for the grotesques," he said, "I beg to differ. Death is so terribly final, while life is full of possibilities." Jaime smiled. "You are a perverse little imp, aren't you?" "Oh, yes," Tyrion admitted. "I hope the boy does wake. I would be most interested to hear what he might have to say." His brother's smile curdled like sour milk. "Tyrion, my sweet brother," he said darkly, "there are times when you give me cause to wonder which side you are on." Tyrion's mouth was full of bread and fish. He took a swallow of strong black beer to wash it all down, and grinned up wolfishly at Jaime. "Why, Jaime, my sweet brother," he said, "you wound me. You know how much I love my family." Ugh, that's like, okay, that was the chapter that for me personally is really got me going. That was the chapter that made me love this book. So yeah, hope you guys liked it, as always, of course. But yeah, the fact that there's an installment means that there's this new installment means that my friend, who I'm making this for, wanted to hear more. So yeah, it was great. I hope anybody who might have heard this listened to all of it. That would be really cool if you did. And yeah, I don't know. Sorry if my voice is a little weird, by the way. I am sick right now. I've been told that my voice sounds normal by my family, but it doesn't sound normal to me. Anyway, yeah, hope you liked it. See you next time.